Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Cosmic Culture, the channel where we talk all things major movie and television news, theories, breakdowns, and much more. I'm your host Chris, and today, of course, we need to talk about the Thor Love and Thunder trailer, which dropped last night. Now, this was teased to us, it was not a surprise, but what was a surprise was how exciting this trailer was for me compared to the first one. So we're going to go frame by frame through it, but first I do want to talk about my thoughts and my initial reaction to seeing Gorr the God Butcher, to getting a better look at Jane Foster's mighty Thor, and many other elements of this movie. Before we move into it, if you haven't already, consider subscribing and turning on that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our other major movie and television news updates happening here daily. You can also check me out on other socials, Twitter at TheCultureChris and Instagram at Chris M. Rosser. Links to both of these are in the description. So, initially, this trailer is fantastic. I think Gorr looks awesome. I know already a ton of you are in the comment section typing about how terrible he looks, but I'm going to explain why I don't think it's as much of a problem as you guys think when we get to that part of the trailer. So don't worry, I have something for you. Just stay around for it so you can hear my idea and my thoughts of what's going to happen here with Gorr. Also, I think the movie is very vibrant. Chris Hemsworth is fantastic. Jane Foster looks like she's going to be very exciting in this film as well. So yes, I was very pleased with this trailer, but let's move into the frame by frame and see what we noticed, because there were a few things in here that if you blinked, you definitely missed. So this one starts off with a very similar vibe to the first one. It shows us Chris Hemsworth trying to find himself, and it shows us Korg explaining that this is this great Norse cosmic warrior. I believe they call him a space Viking in the trailer, and that's really cool and very telling. But Korg gets to this whole story and he eventually gets to the introduction of Jane. But before that happens, we see a little montage of Thor getting healthy, figuring himself out. We see the Guardians of the Galaxy, all stuff we've already previously known. Nothing too exciting just yet. Again, we see new Asgard with the cruise ships, the golf, all of the tourist stuff going on, which I don't think the Asgardians are ultimately going to be too happy with, and I don't think Thor is too happy with either. We see the montage of him working out and actually pulling at the Guardians of the Galaxy ship with them putting pressure against him, and he's still prevailing. So he gets pretty fit, and we definitely see that towards the end of this trailer, and we've heard this coming from other actors and Chris Hemsworth himself, who said this was the most fit he has ever been for Thor or ever in his life, and it really is showing, which is always fun and is always awesome. Then we get to the end of Korg's monologue where he's going on and on about Thor, where he talks about Jane, and we see Mjolnir, which Thor thinks he's getting. He reaches out for it, and it goes immediately back to Jane Foster. This was how the first trailer ended. We see these black creatures running around who they're fighting here together. This is Thor and Jane's first introduction to each other, as we can see and as we saw in the first trailer as well. We do get a interesting look at Thor with his helmet on. I say this because there is something kind of off about this scene. Now, whether it's the CGI or whether they added this scene with the helmet in it and it's kind of been changed in order to better suit whatever they're trying to portray in the trailer, I'm not 100% sure yet. I'm not necessarily worried that the CGI in the movie isn't going to be well put together or overall good. I think the movie's going to be very visually pleasing when it's all said and done. I just think that something's going on here, whether they're changing something in the scene for the trailer or something just hasn't been completed. Again, not too worried about that. Jane and Thor meet, and it's a very fun introduction. She then says, how long has it been? 3-4 years, and Thor gives an exact date, which was actually in the 8 years. So it seems like maybe Natalie Portman's Jane has been blipped, or was blipped. I don't think it's been confirmed yet, but she says it's been about 4 years or so, and he says it's been 8. And that 5-year gap from the blip might be that time that has been missing in the middle. Now from here we seem to jump around a fair amount. We go from being on Mount Olympus or seeing Gorr to different places where Thor's adventured to versus where Gorr's been visiting, and I say visiting even though mostly he's just been killing gods. So let's talk about the first look at Gorr the God Butcher. Now the original thing we see is him grabbing what would be in the comics the all-black Necro Sword, which as you may or may not know comes from the god Null, the god of symbiotes, the god of venom. So there are some connecting pieces here that we may or may not see in the movie, although we do see what seems to be very symbiote driven looking tentacles in the very next shot. Now, right after that, we get what is our first full look at Gore the God Butcher. And I know what your complaints are going to be. It's not very comic book accurate. He looks like Voldemort. Oh, no, no, no. Lots of complaints, lots of complaints. But bear with me with this idea. As we see throughout the trailer, Gore the God Butcher makes several appearances, and each time he looks a little bit different. He seems to be more beaten up. He seems to have more black kind of tarnishing his body and his fingertips. He has scars on his face. He's gone through a lot, and he's being either possessed by the all-black Necrosword, being corrupted by the all-black Necrosword, or just being beaten up in battle. I think eventually towards the end of the movie, whether this is Gore's only movie or not, we don't really know, but I think towards the end of the movie, Gore will get more and more of a comic book appearance. Now, they didn't show this to us in the trailer because it will be a really cool reveal in the movie. They gave us a look at Gore during the earlier parts of the movie, when he still has some form of a human figure. Now, I know he's an alien and he's not a human, but I think come the end of the movie, we will see a more complete Gore the God Butcher look, where maybe he will have some of those tentacles that he sees, he'll have a hooded figure, we'll have a very ugly figure, and that's something that Marvel is planning on giving us in the movie. Now, that's my assumption. If you look at him here when he says all gods must die or all gods will die, he doesn't have any of the scars, he doesn't have the black corrosion on his fingers, so I think this will actually be one of the earlier looks, and then this first look where he's taking off the hood is definitely later on in the film. You can see his fingers have changed, he's covered in scars, his lips are oozing black, and I think eventually we will end up getting a more comic book look. So I think he looks really, really good as is. I don't necessarily, as a fan of the movies, as a fan of the comics, need a perfect comic origin. I just need a really cool character who can give that menacing, terribly evil vibe that I think Gore the God Butcher deserves. So we'll see, but moving on, I am excited for Gore the God Butcher in the film. So now we can go over to Mount Olympus, and like I mentioned, this trailer doesn't really go in order, it kind of jumps around back and forth, but here's what we've learned from the scenes that they have given us. It seems Thor and company are there in hiding and undercover. That's why Korg, Valkyrie, Lady Thor, and Thor himself are all wearing these kind of tunics hiding who they are. It's possible for many different reasons that this is happening. Off the top of my head, the best guess would be, well, he's an Asgardian, they're from Olympus, the Greek gods versus the Norse gods. It's probably some bad blood between Zeus and Odin, something to that nature, but they seem to need help. It's possible that Thor already knows now about Gore the God Butcher and is coming to Zeus to either warn him or ask for guidance on what is he supposed to do to stop this guy who's going around killing all of his friends and different gods and even different planets, as we see Gore the God Butcher's power as he takes out this moon, this asteroid, this planet, this location. He's a very, very powerful character. So they go into hiding, is my assumption, to get to Zeus, and some type of event is happening here. Well, eventually Thor is brought onto center stage, and as you see at the very end of the trailer, they try to find out who he is by saying, well, let's see who you are under the disguise. They flick off all of his clothes. We see Chris Hemsworth is super jacked, which we all knew was coming, but wow, awesome transformation. And then, you know, we've learned a little bit more about Thor and Jane, and we see Jane's abilities as she fights there in the same center of Asgard. And overall, it looks like there's a very cool romantic connection, at least that is being teased. Now, the big question I think we're all asking ourselves is Thor gonna die? Is Jane gonna die? Are they both gonna live? Who's going to be Thor following this? Will Jane remain Lady Thor? What's the big question? And I think that's something we're just going to have to wait to see, because honestly, any of those combinations are 100% possible. Jane and Thor could have a happy ending. Jane and Thor could both remain alive but still not get together because it's just not meant to be. Thor could die trying to save Jane. Jane could die trying to save Thor. It could be a whole mess. But when it comes out, that's going to be one of the big reveals of the movie, and that's not something we're really going to get an answer for in these trailers. Now, on top of seeing Gore the God Butcher and seeing Jane and Thor run around Mount Olympus, we also see Thor and Valkyrie specifically fighting against Gore the God Butcher in a very peculiar location where everything's kind of black and white, where everything has this dark hue to it except for Thor and Valkyrie, who, if you've noticed in the trailer, Valkyrie is actually fighting with a lightning bolt, which she either stole off of Zeus or Zeus gave her to help them on their quest to kill Gore the God Butcher. Regardless, this area and this action sequence is both visually pleasing and super, super intriguing. One, I don't know why everything's black and white, other than maybe this is a place where the sword that he has is summoning its power. It's potentially possible that we won't see Null, and there won't be a connection to Null in this because of the complications of the symbiotes, of Sony owning some of these characters, and not 100% knowing where the property lies for Null. and for the symbiote king and for all of that storyline. So there is a possibility that the sword will have a different origin for the purposes of the MCU due to property rights and who owns what character and who owns what names, but that's something we'll figure out when the movie comes out as well. One more scene that definitely needs a little bit of mentioning is this scene in a cave that seemingly has some really cool stuff in the background. We can see the Living Tribunal, the Watcher, Lady Death, and a few other statues behind that I don't think I could possibly ID. Now, the Living Tribunal, the Watcher, and Lady Death, 100% that's who we are seeing here. The other cosmic entities could be anybody, and I think the middle statue might be destroyed or defaced or eroded over time, and then the statue at the very end, just not really sure who it is, and I don't want to try to make any wild guesses without confirmation. During my live stream, a lot of people were saying they saw Kang in this. It's not Kang. It's not going to be Doom. It's going to be some cosmic entity. So maybe we would see Eternity or some other characters. Maybe even Ego is the one in the middle there, even though he's dead in the MCU. He was a god for a very, very long time, and these statues could have outdated his death. So those are kind of some guesses, but we are definitely in some type of hall of cosmic entities, and I'm very curious to see how this plays out for us as well. Overall, the tones of this trailer are fun. We definitely are seeing a lot of influence from James Gunn and the Guardians of the Galaxy, and of course Taika Waititi pulling his own humor and his own fun like we saw in Thor Ragnarok, and then there will be some very serious tones. This villain is pretty bad. He's pretty evil, and he's definitely full of tragedy, which is going to come out on screen. I think Christian Bale has an awesome surprise for us waiting with this character in the movie. Lots of different things to uncover still. What's going on with Asgard? Will it move somewhere else? Will it change, or will it continue to do tourism? And what's going to happen with Thor, who's done being a hero and wants something more? I can't wait to find out, and we will be learning more and uncovering more as we wait for the release day of July 8th this year. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notification bells so you don't miss out on any of our daily uploads. And I'll catch you guys all in the next one right here on Cosmic Culture.